So I first came to Taraloka on one of the really early retreats, possibly 1987. And basically, if you wanted to go on retreat, you came, and you were a woman, you came to Taraloka. There wasn't any other real retreat centres at that time. And I came and studied a Mitra study course, if you like, a kind of part of the Mitra study course in one of the rooms in the community. And at that stage, I think anyone who's living in the community over there vacated their bedrooms to make room for retreatants. Do you see what I mean? That we only had that building over there. This was just all barns. And they just moved from one room to another, you know, all grouped into one room, and then they all spread out again when you went home and all that sort of thing. So that's where we were. But I started living here in 1994, and I left 20 years later. So I'm going to say a little bit more about why I came to Taraloka then, and really it's to do with how I came to Taraloka to live, and then why, because the how came first and then the why came later. So I came to Taraloka because somebody made a phone call and said, would you come and be booking secretary for 9 months? Okay. So up until then, what I've been doing is I've been living in Glasgow. I've been living in Glasgow for 11 years. I had very significant friendships. I've been living in different combinations of women's communities for most of that time. At that point, we were living in a really massive women's community on over 2 floors in a very lovely part of Glasgow. I was living with Punya Vantry over there. And beautiful, huge spaces. We had like maybe 4 rooms that were at least half the size of this marquee. We have 4 of those, and then a lot of bedrooms and things like that. It was massive. And I had, very, very significant friendships up there. Well, what happened just a year before was that my father had died of cancer at the age of 56. And I'd lived with him for maybe 2 months on and off. I'd come down to Glasgow and lived in a flat in Croydon in order to support him through his last few months. He only lived, I think, from the diagnosis, is that the word, until his death was maybe 6 months. Okay. And we knew it was never going to be a long job, as it were, at that point. The secondaries were already in his liver. And if you're living with somebody who's dying of cancer, you're in a totally immersive situation. There's nothing else going on, basically. Croydon was having Christmas over that time. You walk through the, what was that shopping centre called? The Whitgift Centre. Lights, Father Christmases, and it totally looks superficial, pointless, and weird when you've got a man of 56 in the flat up the road, sort of thing, yeah? And I was just in this world with him. I had 2 sisters that came and went a bit. They had kids. I had a mother, and my mum and dad were been divorced for about 10 years, but she also helped out. And she helped out at weekends. She would come up for the weekend. I would go down to her house for the weekend, and then we'd swap over again. And once or twice I went back to Glasgow just for a break. I remember him getting really upset when I went to Glasgow once during half term, so that my mum could be there. She was a teacher and she could look after him over half term. And he got really upset, and I said, I want you to know, Dad, if I thought you were going to die while I was away, I wouldn't be going, so don't worry about it. That's the sort of, I suppose they're the kind of conversations we were having, yeah. He was a big architect in London, so some of his buildings weren't quite finished before he died. I wrote poetry. I wrote significant letters to people talking about what it was like to be alongside this process. I had a friend in Glasgow, Virya Davy, who's one of my KMs, and she probably spoke to me every day on the phone. And anyone who phoned me just stepped into my world, yeah? And then I went back to Glasgow after he died and emptied his flat, everything like that. And I was a complete renunciant at that point. Like nothing looked worth anything in a positive way. It was more like, what are you going to do apart from bring significance and meaning to your life, really? And I had a very, very good friend up there who was totally falling in love. She was doing a whole other trajectory. I was doing something else. I was doing renunciant, cut everything out, all this sort of stuff. I remember once she shouted at me across the hallway, "At the moment, I don't even know if I like you." And I said, "I know, but you and I can always talk about it, and that makes a complete difference." So there's so much trust between us, yeah. And then a few months later, Taraloka phoned me and said, "Would you become booking secretary for 9 months while somebody goes and looks after their mum in, I think, in New Zealand?" And I said to my friends, "What should I do?" And they said, "Well, you've only just come back from your dad. Why would you go away again?" Okay, fair enough. And then I said to the person, "Just contact me again." I didn't know the community at Taraloka, except for one person. I knew Ratnavandana very well. She had been leading my retreats, my meditation retreats, and doing meditation reviews with me for probably quite a few years, maybe over about 6 years or something. And I said, "Just ask me again another time." And then a few months later, they asked me again. And I think in that moment, I knew I was going to say yes. I just didn't know how I was going to tell everybody else that, yeah. But there was a book that I was reading that made quite a big difference to me. And the book was called The Evil Cradling by Brian Keenan. So this is about this guy. He's a very poetic, beautiful writer. And he was hostage in the Middle East for 4.5 years, yeah. And there's this moment where he gets told, well, he realizes he's going to be released, but he's got a very, very good friend still in captivity, McCarthy, yeah. And he writes this beautiful page where he goes through a kind of decision-making process. Can I leave my friend or not? And he says in the book something like, each person needs to choose their freedom when it comes. Yeah. And to not do so would be to belittle others, which is quite an interesting angle, yeah. And in that moment, he decides he's going to leave the prison or whatever it is. And I was saying, each person needs to choose their freedom when it comes. Yeah. So I made the decision to move to Taraloka. I remember coming down here. I arrived here on during an order weekend in December. The order weekend in the first weekend of December. Everybody was at the London Buddhist Centre because that's where order weekends happened for the women's side. There was maybe, well, at the most, there was 100 Dharmacharanis in Britain, if not in the world, actually. It's not much bigger than that. And so I arrived into a small Mitra Sangha at that moment. And I had a rucksack, this was for like 9 months or whatever it was, a rucksack, and I had 3 enormous planks of wood for shelving in my bedroom. Don't ask. I had plans, yeah. And I constructed my life, and I lived in this tiny room, which I loved, which was like a monk's cell, actually, yeah. So why did I stay rather than why did I go? Because I went there just because, well, I think I went there because I needed an immersive situation. I'm a big person. I expand out. I know a lot of people. I need a situation that contained me. I also wanted a situation where I knew exactly what I was going to be doing every day. I didn't have to get up and think, what the hell am I doing with my life? It was totally obvious to me what I was doing with my life, which in a way was it was like looking after somebody dying with cancer. You know exactly what you're doing that day. And so I lived this immersive life. That's what I did. But it was an incredibly creative, empowered life full of scope. We were a bunch of women making income, creating a retreat centre, creating a program of retreats that we wanted to offer the women's wing. So we had a number of layers to that project, individuals, the project itself, and then the women's wing, and trying to empower and create women that would stand proudly in the whole order, if you like. That's what the project was. Yeah, small. Do it before breakfast every day. I also stayed because I began to move through the world as the fourth sight. So talking of nuns, you want people to witness that another possibility is possible. There's an alternative to the usual life, and it's a good life. And I mean, we used to handwrite all the letters, yeah? And on the back of the envelope where you'd sign, you know, where it was coming from, this is quite long, Taraloka Buddhist Retreat Centre for Women, Cornhill Farm, Whitchurch, Shropshire, SY132LD. That's what I wrote, because I wanted any post box to receive that there is a Buddhist retreat centre for women in the world. Okay. I meet people and they say, where do you work? And I say, I live in a Buddhist retreat centre. And then we're off, another kind of conversation. You're the fourth site. Yeah. Anything else was I supposed to answer?
Yeah, one thing you got from your time here.
I think I just got a life of creativity, really. I was just so empowered. I mean, you're just functioning on every level. You're a businesswoman, you're a team player, you're the best friend, you're a Kalyana Mitra, you're in service. I mean, God, I just had such a rich life. You have no idea. I really can't, I don't know how to express it. I just got so much. It was like, I just got this tremendous scope. And we were meeting attitudes, like people didn't know that women could do stuff like this. I remember one woman saying to us, I didn't come to Taraloka because I thought, well, what will happen if the heating breaks down? And I said, and she said, because there's no man to fix it. And I said, we'll do what your husband does. We'll call an engineer. I also remember meeting a Dharmachari. We'd done a really big mixed event. We did a big mixed event here, one of the first one we did. And he said to me afterwards, he said, God, my goodness, Saddhanandi, I never knew a women's retreat centre could do such an event. And I said, my goodness, I never knew I knew someone like you. We're pushing against something, okay? I mean, I'm happy to battle out other fights now, really am, but we were pushing against it there. How long have I got now?
You've got 1 minute 55.
Do you miss it?
It's very different to Adhisthana, and I don't miss it. Yeah, but it's hard to know what it is actually. I think it's I just was given so much, and after about 6 months, I went down to Taraloka, which had just opened, and I was ordained. And before I left here, I arranged for a very beautiful bunch of flowers to arrive in the community. And I knew you always can guess pretty much where you'll end up being ordained. You've got a 3.5-week retreat. You've got a rough idea when you're going to get ordained. And so these flowers arrived. I mean, honestly, women are so, not women, sorry, people are so sort of naive sometimes. It's like, oh my goodness, she's come out of the retreat and sent us flowers. Yeah. Anyway, I arranged for this bunch of flowers, and I was just given so much. Yeah. And it was just, I wanted to give something back. And it placed me in the Sangha, it placed me in the order. Taraloka isn't geographical, it's Sangha based. You know, the fact that it's in Shropshire, it makes no difference, or Whitchurch or whatever. It's not to do with that. Yeah. Wrexham.
It's in
Yeah.
Wales.
I know it's
Wales.
because the postcode is Shropshire. Yeah. But yeah, either way. What I'm trying to say is it's not geographical, it's Sangha based.
I think you gave a lot back.